not bring it back on Monday night?
I certainly do.
There are 249 town meeting members. 125 constitutes a quorum. The constable informs me that a quorum is present. Session 2 of the November 6, 2017 special town meeting will now come to order. 2 quick public service announcements. There is a lost iPhone. Hilda Greenbaum's iPhone ran away on Monday. If anybody finds an iPhone, please check with Hilda to see if it's hers. Second announcement. There's apparently a bicycle outside to the left of the entrance to the building that has red blinking lights just blinking on and off, using up the light battery. So if that's your bicycle, go fix it. Are there any newly elected town meeting members who were not sworn in last spring and were not sworn in on Monday? I don't see any, so we're good with that. Quick review of the schedule. We are next scheduled, the next time we have the auditorium is tomorrow night, Thursday, November 9th. Just to explain the process for those of you who forget how it works, when the select board makes a motion to adjourn, which is not debatable, they will make a motion to adjourn to tomorrow night, Thursday, November 9th. If you don't want to meet tomorrow, if you prefer to wait and meet next Monday, you would vote no on that motion to adjourn. If that motion fails, they would immediately make another motion to adjourn to next Monday. So if you want to meet tomorrow night, you would vote yes on that motion. If you don't want to meet tomorrow night, you would vote no. Next week, we have the auditorium booked for Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And then we have 2 additional Mondays after that, which hopefully we won't need. Quick note about seating, which I like to repeat every night. Seats on the floor of the auditorium may be occupied only by town meeting members, except for the front row, which may be used by members of the press and by members of town committees and town staff participating in the presentation or discussion of articles. Such persons must wear non-voter stickers, which are available at the check-in table. Seats in front of me on the right are occupied by the select board members, town manager, assistant town manager, co-finance directors, assistant to the town manager, and IT staff. And the finance committee is seated to my left. Spectators and town residents who are not town meeting members may be seated in the bleachers to the rear of the auditorium. New information for town meeting members can be found on the back table to my left. Old information can be found on the back table to my right. Amherst Media provides gavel-to-gavel coverage of our proceedings on Public Access Channel 17. I'd like to thank their staff and volunteers. I'm aware that we were not transmitting live on Monday night. They figured out and fixed the problem, and I've been told we are transmitting live tonight. And I see cameras, which proves it. And I believe you can also watch Monday night's proceedings on the Amherst Media site if you'd like to. If you wish to speak, you must raise your hand to be recognized. You must hold up a card to indicate your position. Green indicates yes, red indicates no. A white card indicates that you wish to speak without advocacy or ask a question. A reminder, if you bring your green or red cards home with you, please remember to bring them back to the next session. And if and when, I shouldn't say if, when we dissolve this special town meeting, that night, hand in your red and green cards so we don't have to make new ones for the next town meeting. When you're called on, please first state your name and precinct. If you forget, I will interrupt and ask you to do so. If you need more than 3 minutes or more than 5 when speaking to a motion that you have made, you must request additional time before speaking, and town meeting will vote on your request. If you're speaking from the floor, please wait for the microphone and speak into it. This will allow viewers outside the auditorium to hear you. The microphone will be on when it is handed to you. Hold it close to your mouth when you speak. Non-members who wish to speak should stand at the rear of the right-hand aisle. Any registered voter of the town of Amherst who is recognized by the moderator may speak without special permission. Others may speak with the permission of the majority. If you're making an amendment to a motion, the amendment must be presented in writing with 4 copies submitted to the front table. Procedural motions, such as a motion to refer or a motion to dismiss, do not need to be presented in writing. If you make any motion from the floor, it must be the first thing you do after you've been recognized and have identified yourself. You cannot speak first and then make a motion. If you've not already done so, please check your cell phone. Make sure it is silenced or off. If at any point in time you are confused about the proceedings, it is appropriate to call a point of order and ask for a clarification. It's always also okay to phone me, send me an email, or see me prior to town meeting if you need an explanation of any kind. Okay, hang on.
You ask if somebody has 112, they should.
Good. Well, this segues right into my next thing. Would everybody take a look at their electronic device? And is there anybody out there who has device number 112, 112?
I know who it is.
Aha, she knows who it is.
It's Harpo. Harpo is 12. He got 112. We should bring it back.
Okay. But while we're on the subject, everybody should take a look at that number, because you get the same number every night when you come here, typically. There might be some exceptions, but mostly you do. So try and remember your number, so when you come on a subsequent night, just glance at it quickly and say, yep, that's mine. And if you think it's not yours, go back to the teller and see if they made a mistake. That make sense? Okay, so electronic voting rules. I'm just going to give a quick summary of them. All votes will be initially voice votes. After a voice vote, if the moderator or any member so requests, we will take an electronic vote. Make sure your device is turned on. When it's on, you'll see your device number on the LED display. If you see a totally blank screen, press and release the power button, bottom right corner, and the display will appear on the screen. Is there anybody who can't turn their device on and just sees a blank screen? Good. I've been told they had a battery swapping party in the IT department, and we all have fresh batteries. The only functional buttons are 1, 2, and 3. 1 is yes, 2 is no, 3 is abstain. You never need to press any other button. Other buttons will have no effect on your vote. A vote to abstain will be recorded, but it will not count towards the result. There may be a lag time of a few seconds from when you press the button to when your vote is displayed. At the end of the voting window, I'll check to make sure everyone sees their vote before we close the vote. You may only vote with the device that has been assigned to you. At the end of the evening, please power off your device. To do so, you press and hold the power button until the LED display is clear, and always return your device when you leave town meeting, and don't try to return it to the same side where you picked it up. So if you picked up your device over there, return it over there. If you don't return your device, you will get a call from the town clerk's office the next morning, and no one wants to get that phone call. Okay, we are now going to have a test vote. Everybody satisfied their device is showing the vote that they clicked on? We'll see if I'm the only one who said no. No, 22 of us. I love that. Okay. Where am I? So we have two procedural motions that we're going to hear right away. And I call on Ms. Hazard, who is somewhere here, hopefully. Okay.
I move to have Article 10, Regional School District Planning Committee, heard immediately following Article 15.
Motion's been made and seconded. You may speak to your motion.
So should this article pass, the district will apply for a grant from the Efficiency and Regionalization Competitive Grant Program. The application for this grant is due next week, and it can't be submitted until there's a positive vote from town meeting. So there's a time sensitivity here in having this article come before town meeting.
Further discussion before we come to a vote? Yeah, I see a hand. And I am going to explain the order of events tonight, so if that's your question. Okay, question then?
Peter Everett, Precinct 2. I wondered what time next week, because if it's due on Monday and we decide not to have a meeting tomorrow night, then we need to have that. We make it more important for it to be tonight as opposed to Monday.
Yeah. Ms. Hazard.
Yeah, it's due Wednesday.
I hear a point of order way down there. Can we get a microphone way down there?
Maria Kapicki, Precinct 8. It's my understanding that no votes are official until town meeting is adjourned.
It's a good question. I asked that same question. Apparently, this is an exception to that rule. Just having the vote even before, not adjourned, before town meeting is dissolved is the rule. But even if town meeting is not yet dissolved, having a yes vote is what they need to submit for the grant. That's what I was told. Good question, though. Are we ready to come to a vote? All those in favor? So just actually, tonight we are going to be hearing first Article 13, the TMAC bylaw, then Article 12, Shade Tree bylaw, then Article 16, 100% renewable energy resolution, then 15, zero energy bylaw. And if this passes, we would then hear Article 10. All those in favor of hearing Article 10 immediately after Article 15, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. Passes unanimously. Now call on Ms. Hazard for another procedural motion.
I move to have Article 11, resolution regarding charter school funding and expansion, heard immediately following Article 10.
Motion's made and seconded. You may speak to your motion.
This is the second of 2 school committee articles on the warrant. In the interest of having all members and school officials present for both articles, we request that this article is heard immediately following Article 10.
Is there discussion before we come to a vote? This requires a majority. I see no hands. All those in favor of hearing Article 11 immediately after Article 10, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. Passes unanimously. Okay, we begin now with Article 13, and I call on Mr. Hornick to make the motion.
I move in terms of the article, and I request 7 minutes. I might only need 6, but I want to be safe.
Okay, let's look for a second first on the motion. Do we have a second? Second. And Mr. Hornick has requested 2 additional minutes for 7 instead of 5. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. Moderator hears a majority. You may continue, and you have a total of 7 minutes, which, as you said, you don't have to use it all.
Mr. Moderator, members of town meeting, and yes, this article proposes to create a town meeting advisory committee. It is the work of the TMCC Subcommittee on Policies and Procedures. The article rests on one simple idea. What if town meeting had an advisory group that was committed to reviewing individual warrant articles prior to town meeting and reporting, both in writing and orally, useful information about expected impacts, as well as the pros and cons of each article? Would you find that valuable? Let's briefly examine this possibility. What are its strengths? What are its weaknesses? Well, first, town meeting often hears only one point of view when people speak on an article. Whether it is the authors, the finance committee, the planning board, the select board, and individual members, people typically have a position to defend. Rarely, if ever, does a speaker say, there are reasons to vote for this article, but let me also note some reservations. That's what I'm going to attempt to do, based primarily on concerns that we have heard in earlier public reviews. Most legislative bodies, and town meeting is the town legislature, have multiple committees organized to vet proposed statutes, generally well before they come to the floor. Legislation can get changed for the better if the pros and cons are reviewed by a group representing the legislature. In our legislature, in which the members are volunteers with very limited time to do advanced research, this will provide information that could be quite helpful. Slam dunk, as they say. But aren't there ways in which this could go wrong? Well, despite the obligation to research and present both points of view, members could be biased. and fail to meet these obligations. I would expect one person's bias would be offset by another's, and the end result is we would get a balanced analysis. While there is nothing in the proposed bylaw to guarantee this, I think it's worth the attempt to create a structure that makes it likely town meeting will hear both sides of the story before it proceeds. And how about expertise? Town meeting generally faces a very diverse set of articles. Will the committee have the necessary skills and experience or knowledge to do a good job? My expectation is that they would take advantage of the skills and experience of other Amherst citizens through relevant committees, interviews, holding their own public hearings, attending other relevant public meetings, and the like. That would make sense. We, the committee, has argued that there are a range of issues that ought to be considered by this committee. The following are examples of impacts that the committee report may address with respect to any particular warrant article as appropriate. And I put them up here. Benefits and impacts to specific neighborhoods. Benefits and impacts to particular economic groups of taxpayers. Benefits and impacts to special populations, children, families, elderly persons. The streetscape of the town. The town history and culture. Public safety. Economic vitality. And to the town's environment. Yeah, I guess I got it all there. Would the committee be a drain on the, even though every issue will not be relevant to every article, that's still a tall order. Will the committee have the motivation and energy to pursue these responsibilities? Will we get volunteers willing to sign on? We can only find out if we try. Would the committee be a drain on the time of town staff and others when committee members seek information to prepare their report? What will the true costs of the committee be? We could point to the Finance Committee, which has a similar but non-overlapping role to the proposed Town Meeting Advisory Committee. It seems to be able to keep within reasonable bounds. But am I certain that's a fair comparison? Will anyone read and value the committee report alongside the Finance Committee report when both arrive in the mail with the town meeting warrant? I personally would look forward to reading such a report and hearing what the committee has to say on the floor of town meeting. My guess is that there are others who would agree, or at least agree, that it is worthwhile to give the committee a shot. Brookline Town Meeting, which has a similar advisory committee, is reportedly able to move more quickly through its lengthy warrants than we are able to. I have recommended, with the blessing of the committee that I worked with, that we enact the bylaw and in 3 years' time ask for a revote. If this is a valuable idea, 3 years is long enough to prove itself. If it's not helpful, then we can remove the bylaw from the universe along with the committee, or tinker with the language if changes would fix what's wrong. This is an ambitious idea. It is intended to prove the quality of decision-making that we do in town meeting. Will it work as expected? I have attempted to review reasons why it would, as well as why it would not. Although there are likely more pros and cons to consider, I look forward to hearing the analysis offered by others. After all is said and done, each of us will weigh these and decide whether the potential benefits outweigh the risks of going forward. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Mic on? So, is my mic on? Is my mic on? Anybody? Yes. Yes, okay. So I have a little bit of a procedural dilemma here because it says in my script I'm supposed to call on Chris Riddle next to speak for the TMCC. Is that correct, or was Mr. Hornick's? Because really he spoke for the TMCC, so that's incorrect. Good. That solves my dilemma. I next call on Ms. Brewer for the Select Board.
Mr. Moderator, may I have 7 minutes with the intent of not using them up, but to give me the time?
So Ms. Brewer has requested an additional 4 minutes. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. No. You've got it. 7 minutes, hopefully less.
Thank you. Hopefully less. So, the Select Board voted on October 16th to not recommend this article to town meeting. Well, that was a unanimous vote on our part. I will point out to you immediately that we did not have the benefit of TMCC SPP's presentation to us because they got their dates mixed up and our schedule was full and we did not have time to ask them to come back on another date. They received the same outreach that every other committee had received. So it's a little confusing because a lot of what we based our discussion on was the fact that 2 of the 5 select board members had attended a specific September 13th meeting that TMCC SPP advertised to all of you as town meeting members and out into the community about this process. And in fact, the handout from that night is much the same as the handout you received in town meeting mailing number 1. So the select board certainly does try with every kind of committee we have in town to support what other committees are doing because we realize that as the select board, as the chief elected officials townwide, we are not experts in lots of areas. We like to think we know a lot of things, and we do know a lot of things because we work on things year-round that are a variety of issues. But we often look to expertise of other committees. We'll say, has Disability Advisory Access Committee looked at this? Has Conservation Commission looked at this? Et cetera. And so we certainly want to respect the apparent outreach that TMCC SPP has done with both the public and town meeting members to say, hey, this is what people want. So who are we to tell town meeting you don't actually want it? So in the spirit of the pros and cons, I tried to come up with a list. Of course, being me, the boxes got really, really long, and so I'm not going to put it up on the screen for you. But I'm going to try and touch on a few of them. So one thing this proposal does, in addition to all the things Mr. Hornick talked about, is you're going to probably get bored because this is process. But that's one of the things the select board's really devoted to. So what this does, what this proposal does, what this bylaw would do, is it would create a formalized town meeting discussion space that maybe would work all year round, unlike now where it tends to work just around the times of town meeting, but it would be subject to open meeting law with posted meetings and minutes, just like TMCC is now. Unfortunately, under our current contract with Amherst Media, those meetings wouldn't be taped or televised, but of course they'd still be public meetings, like lots of other meetings we have in town that aren't taped or televised. Unfortunately, though, the con would be that it creates an online deliberation that's likely going to violate open meeting law. So as soon as anybody on the TMCC, SAP, then the TMAC, then wants to talk to other town meeting members on the listserv, they're going to be considered communicating with a quorum. So the idea of the sort of free-for-all that the town meeting listserv is right now, that won't be possible to continue. That has not yet been discussed as being an issue. It may not be an issue for some of you, but it is something that we've been using for a while now in one format or another. Certainly, it sounds good to provide town meeting members another document to review in advance of town meeting sessions. You already get the warrant, the Finance Committee report, lots of other documents. And it says the report will be submitted to the town manager's office in a timely manner to allow mailing with the last distribution to town meeting members. So, as you know, at annual town meeting, we usually do two mailings, one for fall town meeting. But here's the thing. If you're talking about process and how this is practically going to work, in order to present all the pros and cons in advance of the town meeting sessions, this body is going to have, this new body, TMAC I'll call it, is going to have time to incorporate the recommendations of at least the Select Board and the Finance Committee deliberations in order to make their whole list of pros and cons. And so possibly planning board, other appointed committees, say it's a housing issue, they have to go to the trust. Say it's a transportation issue, they have to go to town meeting advisory committee. It's transportation advisory committee. So it's great that they want to go all those places. But the thing is, they often don't get their recommendations done at those bodies until a week or two before the actual first town meeting session. So the stuff's not going to be ready to mail in the second mailing. So it's a little unclear how having all this list is actually going to get to town meeting members ahead of time. It certainly would be nice to have another document to work from at warrant review and what we're now calling warrant discussions instead of precinct meetings. But again, we're not clear on how that timing's going to work, because if we're still making decisions at the select board on October 30th as to what the pros and cons of an article are, then TMAC isn't going to know what we said. And I'm going to go ahead and say, if TMAC doesn't know what the select board thinks when the select board works on this stuff all year round, then I'm not sure why they want to make a pro and con list that doesn't include some of the things that came up at select board, finance committee, transportation advisory, et cetera. It's stated on the handout that town meeting members don't always have time to delve into the details of articles. Well, we said at our meeting on the 16th, town meeting members are actually all year round town meeting members, so we're not sure why that's a problem. And we're not clear on why we need a separate body to do this. Right now, that town meeting discussion group's not subject to open meeting law. So the first duty of TMCC itself is to provide leadership, organization, education. I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but TMCC could be doing all of these things now without having to elect a separate body. So it's not clear how that's going to work. And it talks about the fact that this would be helpful to people who are making petition articles, to give them friendly amendments that maybe would have support of the initiator. Except those petitioners right now, they don't contact most of the bodies in town while they're writing their warrant articles. And in fact, TMCC SPP didn't talk to the select board about theirs as they were developing it. So we could have helped them with some of these concerns we had we talked about it ahead of time. So I have pages left of things I would tell you, but I won't bore you with it. What I will tell you is we are a little unclear in the staff resources. It does sound like it might not be a big investment, although it does seem like it puts the town manager in a bit of an awkward position because he's going to have to assign a staff member to do some portion of a job associated with this new body, like their staff associated with Finance Committee, and that means they're not going to be doing something else. And in terms of the sunset clause, there's nothing in the bylaw that says we're going to look at this again in 3 years. That's a theory. I will point out to you that the first time we talked about developing town meeting coordinating committee, we said the first time we passed it at town meeting that we would look at it every 5 years. We don't. So that's where we ended up. We do not recommend this article.
Ms. Tileman, I believe, for the Finance Committee, or Mr. Sharma for the Finance? Mr. Sharma for the Finance Committee.
The Finance Committee voted 4-2 with one member abstaining to make no recommendation on this article. As you well know, the Finance Committee evaluates articles that come before us by trying to answer a deceptively simple question. What are the financial implications for the town? I say deceptively simple because estimations of costs and benefits necessary for evaluating the financial implications are seldom straightforward. There is a great deal of judgment involved, and sometimes this seemingly simple question simply cannot be answered. So in discussing this article, the Finance Committee considered costs as those that may be associated with likely duplication of work that existing committees already do, public hearings, documentation and report writing, and staff time. It was not clear to us what those costs would actually add up to, only that they would be positive, directionally up. Furthermore, it was also understood that the proposed committee is not mandated by the statute, unlike committees such as the Finance Committee, which is required by charter. The real challenge for the Finance Committee was in trying to get a fix on the financial benefits that might outweigh the general sense of positive financial costs. It was the majority opinion that benefits could be from improved processes in the town meeting through alternate views, getting formal hearing, and therefore time savings during discussions of difficult articles. But we could not get a clear sense of what the financial benefits would add up to. This unknowability made the financial implications indeterminate. In fact, it appeared to the majority that the costs and benefits in this case are less financial and largely political. As such, especially given that the intent of this article is to educate the town meeting, it is our opinion that it is best to let the town meeting decide. Hence, the majority made no recommendation.
Thank you. This will require a majority vote for passage, and I now open it up to the floor for discussion. And right there, fifth row with the green card.
Michael Greenbaum, Precinct 6. Mr. Moderator, could we have back on the screen the list of benefits and impacts that Mr. Hornick referred to in his remarks? Thank you very much. Mr. Moderator, I am a member of the committee that has crafted this motion, and I ask members to think back to Monday when we were all, boards, committees, and town meeting, sailing in uncharted waters with the legalization of marijuana usage. Monday is a particularly good example of why we need an advisory committee, because everybody was acting in an exemplary fashion, and yet something was missing. I call your attention to the screen to see what was missing. Let me mention just 3 of the issues that came up on Monday. The issue of marijuana retailers in mixed-use buildings, the impacts of such businesses on neighbors and neighborhoods, and possible use of regulation to discriminate against constitutionally protected activities. The Select Board, in proposing its regulatory stance, clearly indicated the pros and cons that it considered. The Planning Board report also mentioned mixed-use buildings and provided maps related to the location of such businesses and the implications for the zoning bylaw. The Finance Committee report raised but could not answer many concerns about impacts on taxation, particularly the sales tax. On the floor of town meeting, members asked questions, raised objections, and offered amendments and substitute motions, some of which passed and some of which didn't. As I say, this was all exemplary. And yet, as the clock neared and then passed 10 o'clock, it didn't feel exemplary. The mixed-use issue did not feel that it had been presented in the most useful way. The Select Board had to be pressed to acknowledge that 2 of its members had concerns about it. The Planning Board, which helpfully included pros and cons in its report, still failed to address the concerns that slowly began to emerge on the floor. And the issue of discrimination did not come up at all until it was addressed on the floor. An advisory committee charged with investigating benefits and impacts, such as those listed on the screen, would have provided us with a richer, fuller, and more timely way to consider how legalized marijuana might affect our town. If we had received the report in our mailing, rather than have these issues raised at 9:50 p.m., the debate on the floor might well have been shorter and better organized. TMAC is necessary not because anybody is doing anything wrong, but because doing everything right still is not giving us the best picture of the impacts of warrant articles on our town. I urge you to vote yes on Article 13.
Thank you. A white card right on the aisle there.
I'm Janet McGowan from Precinct 8. I'm from the SPP. And this is one of the first committees I've joined in town, and I got a packet about open meeting law from the town clerk. And so I was sitting in an orthopedist's office, which I often do with the various family members of mine who are injured. And I got to some page 12, and it said, town meeting is exempt from open meeting law. So and they explained why. I shut it, and then I emailed the town clerk, and I said, it looks like SPP is not subject to open meeting law because we're a body of town meeting. And TMCC isn't either. And we kind of went back and forth on it, and I'm kind of persistent, and and it turns out she checked with the AG, and town meeting is not subject to open meeting law. That's why we can have an open listserv. TMCC doesn't have to post its meetings. It chooses to follow it. SPP, the Subcommittee on Policies and Procedures, we chose to follow it. TMAC will probably choose to follow it, but it's not subject to it. We don't have to, every time we send an email out to somebody or to the listserv, post that, or it's not deliberation. And so I just want to bring that out, and I think that's important to realize, is that there's a lot of reasons why town meeting is not subject to open meeting law, partly because we've been constantly posting, because we're always talking about stuff. And so I just think that's a legal framework that's important to consider here, and just know. Thanks.
Thank you. And the town clerk just passed me a note confirming what the previous speaker said, that town meeting and subcommittees of town meeting are not subject to open meeting law. It may be a policy to comply, but it is not the law. Yeah, right there.
Amy Middleman, Precinct 5. Town meeting and the select board are co-equal parts of town government. Although I respect the select board's opinion, it is not really up to them to determine how town meeting governs itself. It is up to us, town meeting members, to decide if this new committee would be helpful. I believe it would be. It would help to inform our decisions on many issues and provide a diversity of opinion which is currently lacking. I urge we support this.
Way over in the left row, I see a red card there.
Catherine Oppie, Precinct 9. I'm going to vote against this article, in large part because I see every member in this room as an elected official responsible to their constituents. And in that, I understand that it's my responsibility to do my homework, to understand the articles, to read the reports that are coming from the committees, but also to be in touch with my constituents. So I do appreciate the new email process where constituents can email their town meeting representatives in a much easier way than in the past. But I see this as another layer of committee that could potentially have the rest of town meeting feeling like, well, I can just show up at town meeting and I'm going to get the report from this new subcommittee, and so I'll learn about it there. I would much rather have members feel compelled to do their own homework, speak to their own constituents, and make their own decisions. Thank you.
In the back, also holding a red card.
Hank Vandenberg, Precinct 4. First of all, I would like to just suggest that we not focus on efficiency. Democracy is not efficient in the sense that we have to get things done fast, and faster is somehow better. Again, that was sort of implied by the speaker who introduced the motion. Secondly, we are a body of 240 people. That's an incredible amount of knowledge. Replacing that by a committee, every committee or every group eventually gets a life of its own and will take precedence over what 240 people are supposed to decide. I hope it isn't number 13 people for that committee, because that's what we're fighting as it is in town meeting. Stick with the 240 and let the opinions flow on the floor, and let the spontaneity be there, and let the various interests present themselves and contribute to the debate, and don't replace it by yet another committee, another group, again, that's going to get a life of its own and form its own, discussions among themselves, and probably not present all of the viewpoints. Thank you.
Yes, green card on the aisle right there, yes.
Thank you. Don't need that. Hello, I'm Meg Gage, Precinct 1, and I encourage you to join me in supporting Article 13. I applaud the Town Meeting Coordinating Committee, and particularly the Subcommittee on Policies and Procedures, for taking the initiative to propose ways we might better operate to make the best possible decisions for our town. This proposal is consistent with other recent reforms, including the colored cards that help the moderator manage discussion, making our email addresses available to the public, the proactive warrant review sessions, and the wonderful electronic voting. I'm a longtime supporter and member of town meeting. As a member of the Charter Commission, I came to see ways town meeting could work better in terms of clearer representation, improved scheduling in relation to when state budget information is available, and helping members have the information they need to make the best decisions. One of my deep disappointments of my participation in the Charter Commission was the refusal of the 5-person majority to undertake a rigorous discussion of how town meeting might work better, possibly creating a proposal that while it would have made people at both ends of the spectrum very unhappy, might have been a middle way and a step toward less polarization and rancor. But that discussion did not happen, and Amherst is now headed for a decision which will have big-time winners and losers. But back to Article 13. It's a part, in response to the comment over there, of any healthy, functioning, strong legislative branch that appointed committees look more deeply into proposals, research that everyone in the legislative body could not undertake. While town meeting usually approves proposals brought by town staff and town committees, sometimes those proposals have not been adequately thought through from all the points of view of people affected. In the spring, a couple of zoning proposals came to town meeting with no recommendation, and the lacking context in a recommendation, and the lack of a recommendation, town meeting defeated them. A couple of years ago, town meeting might have made a different decision about the zoning changes to allow the 5th floor on Kendrick Place if we had received information about the impact that 5th floor on the skyline and appearance to the building would have. I have some additional, probably controversial ideas about how town meeting could be improved, and I hope we have the chance in the future to discuss those changes. But that's not what we're here to discuss tonight, which is Article 13. I strongly encourage you to vote yes. This is what democracy looks like.
Thank you. Yeah, second row right there with the green card.
Hi, John DeRusso, Precinct 3. I just want to voice my support for this on two grounds. The first is that I am a very young town meeting member, and a lot of you guys have been here for many years, and there's a lot of history behind a lot of bills that come up. And to get more input on those bills and the history behind them and the impacts that they have, especially for someone who is new to town meeting and new to a legislative body, that has a huge impact, not only on how someone votes, but also on how they come to their vote and the process that they use to look at information when they decide how they're going to vote. The other is that I think we are an elected body, and that means that to a degree we have a responsibility that when we see 3 or 4 reports in front of us or 3 or 4 opinions in front of us, we have to decide what that looks like with our own constituents and whether or not we agree with that. I think we're really in an age right now where the ability to look at what we see in front of us and decide, do I believe this, do I not, do I agree with this, do I not, is important. And I would like to believe that everyone in this room has that. And so I think the assumption that people would just look at a piece of paper and say, well, it says not agree on this, so I'm going to vote against it. I don't think that's accurate. I don't think that's what anyone in this room is doing. All the time I've been here, there are very deep, meaningful discussions and really interesting questions brought up on the floor. And I don't think a simple report is going to change that. And so I would just urge you guys, in the interest of democracy and in the interest of the most information possibly available to every member here, to vote yes.
Thank you. Yes, front row there with the white card.
Aaron Hayden, Precinct 8. I have a question for the petitioners. This year, in the course of last year, we dipped below 48 committees, most of which have been appointed by town meeting. Those committees deal all year long with various subjects like disability access, planning, zoning, design reviews, transportation, housing, historical districts, a whole range of issues that town meeting has felt was important, that a body of folks who in the open meeting law process announce their meetings, announce the subjects that they're dealing with at that point, and ultimately some of them come forward to town meeting as a report. My question is, you mentioned briefly that you would interface with these. I'm wondering what the interface would be, and I'm wondering if the principal difference between the TMAC and those committees is that the committees are not required and often not asked to present a written report to town meeting on subjects that we're dealing with at that time. Maybe that's a simpler change, but I'm just wondering what the relationship might be with those committees whose members are committed to 2 things. 1, figuring out the issue And second, the best way to apply what they've learned to the town, to the constituencies that they all represent in one way or another.
Mr. Hornick?
First, I think the last speaker may have misspoke. None of the other town committees are appointed or elected by town meeting. They are all appointed by either the select board or the town manager or the two working together. So this would be a relatively unique committee. The second question is, how would it work with other town boards and committees? And I can speculate about that, and I will for a minute. I am, for example, the chairman of the Amherst Municipal Affordable Housing Trust. We meet once a month, and if we're going to have something to bring to town meeting, which we will from time to time, I would hope that the TMAC would send one or two members to find out what we're doing and to listen to our discussion so they could learn from it. If I present something as the chair of the trust, I am going to tell you why I think you should pass it. Unlike today, I'm not going to tell you why I think you shouldn't pass it or what the downside is. And I think that's fairly common when town committees, when town committees bring something before us. So somebody else needs to take the responsibility for looking at both sides of the story. Now, as people have pointed out, that's everybody's responsibility. But I was trained as a social psychologist, and one of the things I learned is that when it's everybody's responsibility, sometimes it's nobody's responsibility. So to have a group that takes this as their charge, I think will help us. I don't think it will undermine what occurs on the floor of town meeting, but I do think it will be helpful in terms of adding information that people might not be easily able to ferret out for themselves. So that's why I'm here presenting it. I don't know if it will work out perfectly. I think I was clear about that. But I do think it's an important idea. It's worth giving it a shot. If it doesn't work out, then we can get rid of it. And that would be the right thing to do. But at this point in time, I can't promise you that the risks that I mentioned or the risks that other people mentioned will all go away. Thank you.
Right in the aisle here.
Kay Moran, Precinct 4. I'm opposed to this for two reasons. First of all, I think these people will have a bigger job than they can actually do. You talked about the Affordable Housing Trust, and when we created that, it was a very technical thing to create. And your committee had the expertise to come up with the best one. I don't know if somebody coming in from outside would be able to look at all the impacts, pro and con, that your committee didn't discuss. Where would they go? Would they talk to some housing expert outside? It's a big commitment for each of these articles sometimes to learn more than the committee who's devised it, to learn more and to present both sides if there are two sides. So I think it's an awfully big job. And my other concern about it is that it's going to turn into an advocacy committee. When you have people analyzing pros and cons, they're going to inevitably, it's human nature, come out on one side or the other. You have not said in your materials at all that you would be making recommendations on town meeting articles, but I find it hard to believe that you won't inevitably be doing that. And maybe that's what we want a committee for, but I think that it's not what I want a committee for, another committee.
Yeah, right, second in from the aisle with the red card there.
John Cool, Precinct 2. We have 240 members, every one of whom is free to go to the meetings of any of the town committees that are proposing any legislation to town meeting. And I think they're perfectly able to do that. And I think that leaving it alone without an interface, an appointed body of our representatives of the representative town meeting is totally unnecessary, and I urge you to vote this down.
Yes, second row right there.
Chris Riddle, Precinct 2, and co-chair of the Subcommittee on Policy and Procedures, and a member of the TMCC. I would like to explore the notion that this is something we don't need, that all of us can go out and do our research and get to the bottom of all of these myriad articles, such as, for instance, as Mr. Greenebaum pointed out, the marijuana article that we considered, which I found astoundingly complex and hard to process. The logic that says that we all should do our own homework and get totally up to speed on complex and intricate articles would apply also to the Finance Committee. Why do we ask the Finance Committee to give us advice on the financial impacts of all of these articles, for which I am extremely grateful and am extremely happy that I don't have to attend all of the financing budgetary meetings of the town. I think the Finance Committee provides an extremely valid and useful function, and I think this committee is a parallel concept that would provide the same array of services for an array of for several other impacts. So I strongly hope you will all will support this article.
Thank you. All the way in the back with the green card.
Hello, Hellenberg, Precinct 1. I think that this should be supported because we are facing an unprecedented challenge in this town to turn it into a city council, and to raise the level of the downtown core to 4 or 5 stories high. Not to mention that the university seems to be subsuming the town. I think that every day I talk to people that want to know how to get an article on the warrant. It's not clear to a lot of people. I'm kind of appalled that this body lacks a transportation for people to come here and actually witness town government at work. So I very, very strongly urge that this passes. Maybe we can get a shuttle bus to come out here so that people can see how town meeting works, can get articles on the warrant. Some people bemoan some of the things we've passed, like the plastic bag bill. But they, the Emwood would like to see it reversed. But it's not clear at all to them how to get an article on the warrant. Thank you.
Yes, right in the center of the back there. But yet another reminder, if you hold your card like this, I can't see what color it is.
Mary Streeter, Precinct 8. I rise in support of this article. I think it will lead to greater knowledge from all of us. We do have to be realistic. We all don't have time to attend all the different meetings that are of great importance and often don't even have time to watch it on TV. This is a committee that would probably, as I speculate along with John, that maybe there would be someone who goes to the zoning subcommittee. That's no longer televised, so that would be an important kind of information to have. I did want to mention a couple of other things that there are only 2 committees of town meeting, the Finance Committee mandated by law and the TMCC, Town Meeting Coordinating Committee, which was written into our bylaws. We also in the bylaws, we have the right to create subcommittees from time to time. And so we did that because I heard a previous speaker say that, well, maybe TMCC can do something. TMCC is loaded to the max. I'll tell you that. There's no more time for us to do additional things, and that's why I greatly appreciate the work of the Subcommittee on Policies and Procedures. I think the TMAC, Town Meeting Advisory Committee, will give us greater insight, and we also have the option of, if we don't like it, we can dissolve it again. And the thing I wanted to stress too is that this is an elected body of town meeting. That's something that TMCC has now, and town meeting has the right and privilege to elect whoever they want to be on a committee. So I urge you all to vote in favor of this article.
Yeah, the white card right there. Yes, yellow sweater, whatever.
Precinct 5, I call the question.
Can I have my mic on, please? Thanks. Motion for the previous question has been made and seconded. We will now come to immediate vote. If 2/3 of you vote yes, we will then come to a vote on Article 13. All those in favor of the motion for the previous question, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. No. Moderator, here's 2/3. We're going to have an electronic vote on the motion for the previous question. Get your devices ready. And the voting window is open. And let's display the results, then we'll have a point of order. Do you have a device that's not working?
No, it's not. Question 2/3 or 50%. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. It's 2/3. Did it display something other than 2/3? No, it's 2/3. And it passes with 2/3, 123 to 25. Let me just write that down. And now we will come to vote on the motion before us, which is Article 13, which in itself requires a majority vote. All those in favor for the motion under Article 13, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. No. Let's have an electronic vote. And you may display the results. Yes, 99, no, 81. So Article 13 has passed. 99, 81. And we now move on to Article 12. And I call on Nancy Higgins to make the motion. And do we have, there she is, right in front there.
I move in terms of the article.
Second. Can I speak to it?
Could you just leave mine on? I promise not to talk inappropriately. Henry Lappin, who's the chair of the Public Shade Tree Committee, will be speaking to the motion, and you have 5 minutes, Mr. Lappin.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I appreciate you taking the time for this motion. The ordinance in front of you, we've worked on in the tree committee for quite a while. We've run it by, we worked with Alan Snow, the tree warden, on it. We've run it by Guilford Mooring, a bunch of people in the town government. I can't think of them. Christine Brestrup from Planning, Guilford Mooring, Paul Balkelman, and the town attorney have all seen this. We've had problems in the past with people cutting down trees illegally. We've also had problems with people balking at paying the fee, which goes into the tree replacement fund. So this ordinance will help give just a little more oomph to the policy that Alan Snow, the tree warden, now uses. We want to make it into an official ordinance. And I think that'll be really the best thing for our town. It'll really help protect our trees. In one of the precinct meetings, it came up, people wondering about damaged or diseased trees or dangerous trees. And this article does not affect those at all. Alan Snow, the tree warden, can still make a decision right away and take those down if they're a danger. This will protect our healthy trees and make sure we can keep moving forward on having a nice tree canopy in Amherst. Thanks for considering it.
Thank you. I now call on Mr. Wald from the Select Board.
Not yet, still. There we go. Okay, on October 16th, the Select Board voted unanimously to support this article for the reasons stated. It highlights the importance of the Shade Tree Commission and its mission and clarifies its workings for the public. It brings reference to Mass General Law into our local bylaws and establishes procedures for creating regulations and enforcement. We urge you to vote yes.
Thank you. Finance Committee took no position. Do you have a statement, Finance Committee, or just no position? Just no position. Okay. This requires a majority vote, and we are open to discussion from the floor. Is there any discussion? I see a hand way over there with a white card.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jim Brissett, Precinct 6. My question is, there's a lot of town projects either underway or about to get underway, and I can suppose that some of those projects may involve the need or potential need to remove healthy shade trees and presumably then plant new ones in a new spot. So how would this bylaw affect any of the projects that are either underway or about to start in the next couple years? Thank you.
We happen to have a tree warden here, so if you want to get up, introduce yourself. We can.
Hi, everybody. Alan Snow, Division Director of Tree and Grounds and DPW, tree warden and Amherst resident. Currently, the policy that I've been using for about 8 years now exempts the town from the impact of the replacement cost. So this bylaw will allow the select board and tree warden to develop the policy, and at that point, things could be discussed, but I have no intention of adding more cost to our projects at this point for the town benefit.
Thank you. Further discussion? Are we ready to come to a vote? I see no hands. We will come to a vote. Is there a hand? Okay, I see a hand right there.
Vince O'Connor, Precinct 1, and this is addressed to the tree warden if he's able to answer it. The town is currently in the middle of a process of spending literally in the hundreds of thousands of dollars to install street trees, public shade trees, essentially, after a number of decades where most of the activities of the tree warden was to remove dead and dying street trees. And I wonder if, I see a lot of these trees being planted in various places, and I just wonder if you could, hopefully, we won't use this bylaw very often. And I just wonder what steps you and the Shade Tree Committee are taking to make sure that your efforts in planting trees result in as few as possible of those trees perhaps being subject to this bylaw in the future. How do you go about that and in spending your money and installing these the various shade trees across the town that you're doing now?
Mr. Snow?
Not quite sure if I understood the question, but I'll try to answer. So, I mean, right now, the bylaw is for the removal of healthy public shade trees, trees that are in the public way that are being removed for various reasons. So each tree's, removal is taken independently of other removal requests. We look for good locations to plant new trees. We plant the right tree in the right place so that in the future you won't have to cut that tree down because you planted it right on top of a gas line or a sewer line, or you planted it too close to the road when you know in 10 years, 15 years, they're probably going to put a sidewalk there. So we do our best to locate tree locations where they will have a chance to grow to become mature shade trees. And I work closely with private landowners to help put those trees in setbacks so they're not impacted.
Thank you. We ready to come to a vote? I see no hands. This requires a majority for passage. All those in favor of the motion under Article 12, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. We move on next to Article 16. And I call on Andrew Rose to make the motion.
I move in terms of the article, except to strike the word reduced in the last line to read, provide rate stability and possible consumer cost savings through bulk purchasing.
Motion has been made and seconded. You may speak to your motion.
Okay. So you do the clicking? What? Yes, I gave it to you Monday.
16. Was it on a thumb drive? Is there anything you can give them now?
I could, yeah.
Okay. Oh, they found it? Yay.
Thank you.
Okay, you have 5 minutes.
Okay. Hi, thank you. I am Andrew Rose. I am in Mothers Out Front and Climate Action Now and a town meeting member from Precinct 4. The goal of this 100% renewable energy resolution is to move us as quickly as possible to 100% local clean energy. There's two main parts to this. One is asking, thank you, for the town to put climate on the table whenever making any decision that will affect our ongoing long-term energy use. That obviously includes things that last a long time, like buildings, which is one reason why the zero energy building article is being brought with this. To get to 100% renewable, we need to do two things. We have to increase the renewable energy resources, but not up to the level of energy use that we currently have. We can't squeeze out fossil fuels that way. We have to reduce our energy use significantly. And just to give you an example, with a zero energy building, you have about equal amounts of costs in addition to building to code for the renewable resources and the reduction of energy use through very efficient envelope and very efficient HVAC and other systems. So to get to, in 30 years, as close as we can to 100% renewable, we have to have a plan, which we don't have right now. And a group of residents of Amherst, Pelham, and Northampton have been talking about how we might propose to our communities how to do this. So when we vote on this resolution today, we will be influencing our neighbors directly. And we believe after Northampton and Pelham pass similar resolutions, many other communities will as well. And so we have a big impact here right now. So there are many communities that have already committed to 100% renewable across the country, 5 in Massachusetts so far, and 40 or more cities and towns across the country. Many of those dots in California have been using a method that our group has been studying and find very appealing because it allows for communities to control their own energy resources. And that is something else that this resolution asks the town leaders to consider, working with our neighboring communities to develop a plan that uses a law that we have here in Massachusetts, not many states have, for community choice aggregation, also called community choice energy, and we refer to it as CCE. So CCE starts with the purchase of bulk energy, electricity for all residents, businesses, and the municipal uses. Many communities hope for a rate reduction. Our hope is that we will be able to green the grid through this method from the start by choosing where we purchase our energy from. But as soon as possible, it does take time to develop the resources to do this, but as soon as we have enough of a revenue stream, which you have because you're purchasing and selling the energy for the community through this entity. It's a public entity, that intermunicipal entity that will allow us to build up the energy efficiency and the renewable energy in our communities. So it's a self-funding entity. And we hope that we will be able to work collectively because that adds scale. It would be very difficult to do that just in our own community. But over time, we can build more and more local energy resources and own our own resources. Thank you.
Thank you. I call on Mr. Steinberg from the Select Board.
Thank you. The Select Board voted unanimously to recommend Article 16.
Try it now.
Okay, I'm gonna. So the Select Board voted unanimously to recommend Article 16. We take great pride in our community in Amherst for the work that we've been doing. We've been recognized as a green community by the Commonwealth Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs since 2012. We've purchased electric vehicles and installed public charging stations in town parking lots. We're one of the few communities to have an electric school bus. We've been working starting in 2014. We started working on a Solarize Amherst project that was one of several communities in the Commonwealth to participate in such a campaign, which was to a chance for residents and small businesses to install solar at a more affordable cost. It was a highly successful project. Whenever possible, we've tried to increase the efficiency of buildings. Our Recycling and Refuse Management Committee has been working on a zero waste proposal, and the Select Board has endorsed that as a goal, and the committee is now working to achieve it. The committee itself, the Select Board and the Town Manager, considering making into a sustainability committee to broaden its goals. The Select Board has made this a priority for the Town Manager in our 2018 performance goals. We've indicated as one of the goals that we're looking for from our town manager, initiating and advocating for green efforts and programs, including progress on the installation of solar energy generating equipment on the landfill. So we view the goals of this resolution as being consistent with many things that we have strived to achieve and have achieved with great pride. The one thing that, of course, note and that the previous speaker talked about was the community choice aggregation program. It's a goal of the resolution that we're going to strive to achieve that. We actually have worked on community aggregation and electricity programs before. I worked with Mr. Musanti and Mr. Pooler at various times of looking at various possibilities. It's a complex issue because you are making decisions for our community as far as purchase of electricity or giving them that opportunity. You want to make sure that cost is a factor that they're considering. So with those notes, the Select Board is recommending this article.
Thank you. Finance Committee has no position, it's my understanding. This requires a majority for passage. It is a resolution, and it's open to discussion. And yes, right in the front row, white card.
William Kazin, Precinct 3. Wasn't sure if this is a point of order or not. I just wanted to clarify. As a resolution, this means this is non-binding. Is that correct?
Yes, it's not changing the Amherst bylaw or anything like that. It's just a resolution, and within what town meeting wants to do about something, but it's not binding.
Okay. And then I'd also just like to point out that my hometown of Philadelphia has pledged to do this by 2035, a much bigger and more complex place than Amherst. So seems reasonable that we could do it by 2050. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, green card over there in the third row.
Molly Turner, Precinct 1. I want to speak in support of this article. Syria announced at the United Nations climate talks that they would sign the Paris Agreement. This makes the United States the only country that has not signed the Paris Agreement. There are COP23 international climate talks going on in Germany right now. And there is a U.S. people's delegation who are advocating to push back against the Trump agenda. Right now, the people's delegation needs support from people back home, people like us, people at the local level. Amherst is a green community. It's recognized by the Massachusetts Department of Energy and Environment. And there are actually 5 criteria that we should meet to be designated as such. And one of them is to set requirements to minimize life cycle costs for new construction. Buildings create emissions from their construction, their operation, and their demolition. Architecture 2030, a nonprofit organization established in response to the climate crisis by architect Edward Maziria in 2002, posted this message on its website: "Life during Trump. Progress on climate change will come from the bottom up." The U.S. and global architecture and planning community, along with our colleagues in the building sector, will continue to lead the effort to implement the objectives contained in the Paris Agreement towards an equitable, sustainable, resilient, and carbon-neutral built environment. Here at the local level, we at town meeting can insist that we bring such progress to the building sector in this town and join those communities who are going to help the Paris Accord reach fruition.
Thank you. Are we ready to come to a vote? I see no hands, so let's vote. Again, this is a resolution. It requires a majority. All those in favor of the motion before you for Article 16, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. Passes unanimously. We now move on to Article 15. And I call on Mr. Riddle to make a motion.
Chris Riddle, Precinct 2. I move in terms of the motion on your motion sheet.
Motion's made and seconded, so the motion is on everybody's motion sheet, which you should have picked up at the back table.
I would like to ask Lee Jennings from our committee to participate. She's not a town meeting member.
You wish to have her speak to the motion?
I do. Help me with it. We're going to divide the job.
Okay. And is Lee Jennings a registered voter in Amherst?
Are you a registered voter in Amherst?
Okay. And will the two of you share 5 minutes?
Well, I would like to ask for an additional 3 minutes, please.
An additional 3 for a total of 8?
Correct.
All those in favor of an additional 3 minutes for a total of 8, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. You've got it. Okay, who's going first? So why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay.
You don't get to advance it.
Yep. Hi, my name is Lee Jennings, and I feel fortunate to live in a town that has so overwhelmingly supported 100% renewable energy. Well, Article 15 goes beyond goals and requires a clear action. A grassroots group of volunteers has identified one important step Amherst should take, making sure that all new buildings and additions that the town builds are part of the solution for climate change and not contributing to the problem. There is an urgent need to reduce the use of fossil fuels, and there is a need now more than ever to take action at the local and state level. We are not doing enough to reduce greenhouse emissions, and it is time to act boldly and with urgency. There is so much to happen there's so much that needs to happen that it can be overwhelming to know what to do. Let's begin with what we already know how to do and that we have the technology and knowledge to implement right now in 2017. That is constructing zero energy buildings, also known as net zero buildings. These are highly efficient buildings that produce as much renewable energy as they consume over the course of a year. The Kern Center in Amherst is a local example. Let's quickly move forward with something that has a big impact, tackling the CO2 emissions of our buildings. In Massachusetts, buildings and their energy use is responsible for 54% of our CO2 emissions. While zero energy buildings are not common, their construction has really taken off. There was a 74% increase in zero energy buildings in 2015 to 2016. It's critical to establish a zero energy goal from the start of the project, which is what this bylaw will do. We have many knowledgeable people in the area who know how to build zero energy. We have a letter of support on the back table from over 15 local architects, builders, and officials who know that zero energy is feasible and state that this is how we should be building our buildings now. Zero energy works because much care is taken to reduce the amount of energy needed by the building. This lowered energy demand can then easily be covered by renewable energy. Look at the great range of styles that ZE buildings in New England can have. We aren't mandating an architectural style. All of these buildings achieve zero energy in different ways. We are mandating a level of building performance that has clear benefits for the occupants, the community, and future generations. How do we prioritize the many actions that need to happen around climate change? Let's start with the ones that are fiscally responsible. Chris Riddle of our group, who is also a retired architect, will address the strong financial case for zero energy.
How much does zero energy cost? I've produced a spreadsheet projection on experience based on the experience I've had with the Hitchcock Center, a zero energy building completed recently, for which I was the owner's project manager. There's a premium for zero energy. Based on the Hitchcock Center, I've used 10%. I understand that Amherst College uses 8%, but I think 10% is a good, fairly conservative figure. Extra money spent for energy efficiency and renewables isn't like extra money spent for more space or better finishes. It produces a return, the value of the energy cost saved. An expense with a return is what's known as an investment. Amherst would borrow the money to pay for that premium, but most of the payments on that loan are balanced by energy cost savings. Here are two graphs from my projections, which you have in your packet. The top graph is the zero energy version of a generic building. The bottom one is the ordinary code-compliant version of that same generic building. The orange bars are energy expense. The blue bars are debt service to fund the 10% premium for zero energy. You can see that the orange bars for the ZE building are far smaller than for the ordinary building. That's the energy savings from zero energy, and that is what funds most of the loan payments. The total payments for energy and bond payments over the 20-year life of the bond add up to more than the total energy payments alone for the ordinary building. But then, when the loan is retired, there's a huge bonus that lasts the life of the building. Next slide. Next slide, please. This slide merges these two graphs showing the net difference between the ordinary building and the zero energy building each year. You can see that the difference zeroes out after 16 years. Next slide, please. Here are zero energy buildings in cold climates that have been completed recently. One police station, 2 fire stations, and 1 utility building similar to a DPW. These show that ZE buildings are being built right now for some of the kinds of projects being contemplated here in Amherst. Can a DPW or a fire station be zero energy? Well, here are 2 zero energy fire stations, so it clearly can be done for fire stations. We don't have a DPW to show, but I believe that there is nothing inherent in either building type that makes zero energy unfeasible. Much of both buildings are conventional, offices, staff quarters, conference spaces. The unusual features are equipment bays, which do present an unusual load when the bay doors are open. but the temperatures required for equipment bays are lower in winter and higher in summer than for occupied spaces, and both types have large roof areas for solar collection. All of these demands will be entered into an energy model, which will be the basis of design for the buildings. The designer and the engineer will adjust the design until the energy model is satisfied and the budget is achieved. It's more or less the standard way efficient buildings are designed and engineered everywhere these days. Next slide, please. To review, then, passage of our bylaw will mean that all new buildings and additions over $1 million built by and for the town will generate annually as much energy as they consume. And it will mean that there will be no fossil fuels used for these buildings. The bylaw affects only new buildings and additions, not renovations. We've been listening to many and have made amendments to the version in the warrant article, such as we allow fossil fuel-powered emergency generators. We allow renewable systems to be located off-site if the project site is unfeasible. We remove the Jones Library from the listing of subsidiary agencies. This is because the Jones Library building is not owned by the town, and the funding for the expansion project will be funded by the trustees, largely through an MBLC grant. We clarified that ground source heat pumps, sometimes called geothermal, are allowed as part of HVAC systems and are encouraged. Next slide. So I ask, if not now, when? Thank you for your attention. I will be grateful for your vote in favor of Article 15.
Thank you. Mr. Steinberg for the Select Board.
I have a question procedurally first. As you know, the Select Board wishes to make a motion. Should I make that now?
Yes, you should.
Okay, thank you. I move to refer Article 15 to the Select Board.
Motion's been made and seconded. You may speak to your motion.
Okay. And so since I have 5 minutes, I won't ask for additional time. Select Board could not support the article as it was presented, and that is why we've taken a very unusual step. I can never recall a Select Board moving to refer to itself, but it's an example of our real commitment to the underlying goal that we're talking about here, that we've made this suggestion to you tonight and making this request to you tonight. The Select Board supports zero energy as a goal, and we think that we probably can achieve it with many of our buildings in the future, but we do have two very particular concerns about the two buildings that have been mentioned, the DPW facility and the fire station. And by putting this into a bylaw, it is different than putting it into a resolution. And because it does have the force of law to it and has the potential for some very deep consequences for this community that we urge you to consider very carefully. The efforts can and should be made to get to that goal, of course, but the petitioners cited just a moment ago no DPW facility that has met this particular goal, and they cited two fire stations that I've looked at a little bit myself, and we can't be sure that they're comparable. One of them is definitely not comparable by size. They don't have comparable uses, aren't serving the same kind of community, and they aren't necessarily, and this we don't know, located on the same type of land, and the land that you build something on is very much a contributor to achieving this goal. When you talk about the Kern Center and Hitchcock Center, those are built on sort of flat plains at the Hampshire College site, which are very different from some of the other sites that we may have to consider for these facilities that have to meet a variety of goals. The consequence of not meeting a zero energy goal, if you set it into a bylaw, is you can't build the building. And what is going to happen if this is to pass this evening is that the town manager, whose responsibility is to enforce all of the bylaws and uphold all of the bylaws, would have to have certification in advance from the architects and engineers that a building will achieve the goal. May achieve the goal is not sufficient. If he doesn't get certification that it will achieve the goal, then he can't approve the construction of the building. Well, what happens then? Then we're stuck with the existing fire station or DPW facility, or both. And both of them are extremely cost ineffective, inefficient, dangerous buildings that are going to be far worse for the environment and are currently far worse for the environment than a building that will be substantially towards the goal but not entirely there. So these are things that need to be worked out through the process by referring it back to the select board for further consideration. There's absolutely no harm that is going to be done to this process, but it will give us an opportunity to continue to work with the community in a very open manner to try and craft a provision that we can bring back to the town meeting in at the April annual town meeting that we think will be able to achieve the goal without the risk that I have just discussed. So a couple of additional things that I think that it's important to note. There's been some concern expressed, well, if you bring it, if it's done as a motion to refer and the select board can't work something out to the satisfaction of all parties, are the petitioners stuck? Well, the petitioners are not stuck because they can always come back to another town meeting just with 10 signatures. Is there a danger that any building will be built in the time that is going to intervene between now and April? Absolutely not, because we're not going to proceed with either the fire station or the DPW facility because the committee that's working on those projects doesn't even have sites to build it on yet, so they haven't asked you for the funds to do so. And the last thing that was mentioned was a concern that if the charter were to pass, is there a provision in the charter that would make it impossible for a future town meeting to act on this? We've checked with town council, and town council has assured us that no, that is not a factor that we need to consider further, that it can come back before the town meeting. So for all of these reasons, we strongly urge that you give us an opportunity to work with the petitioners and work with this community, work with the DPW Fire Station Committee and others, and to get this done right, and nothing is going to be harmed or risked by doing that. Thank you.
Mr. Schreiber for the Planning Board. Somewhere. There we go. I'm looking for Mr. Schreiber.
I'm speaking.
Okay.
Jack Jumsick with the Planning Board. The Planning Board recommends approval of the motion to refer. The Planning Board discussed Article 15 at 2 public meetings, October 18th and November 1st, and voted on November 1st to support the motion to refer. In general, the Planning Board supports the concept of net zero energy, but believes that the mechanism to achieve it needs further study.
I now call on Lynn Griesmeyer for the DPW Fire Station Advisory Committee. You can, either way, it's okay.
The DPW Fire Station Advisory Committee voted on October 27th not to support Article 15, We then also voted on November 6th to support the motion that the Article 15 be referred to the Select Board. As chair of the DPW Fire Station Advisory Committee, I want to personally thank this group, the Net Energy Committee, for bringing this to the town's attention. It has certainly created a lot of discussion, and I think very, very purposeful and important discussion. Our committee has been meeting for about 15 months with members of the committee who have been working to build a new fire station committee for over 11 years. Members of the Zero Energy Committee have regularly attended our meetings, made a formal presentation, and engaged with us in significant dialogue. While the DPW Fire Station Advisory Committee is very seriously committed to the goal of Article 15, we have concerns, serious concerns, about the technical and financial feasibility of reaching the goal of zero energy in building both a new DPW building and a new fire EMS, both of which are critical to our town's public safety. I'm not going to repeat what Selectman Steinberg has already said. Finally, and of critical importance, is replacing the new DPW and Central Fire Station, both of which presently contribute to our carbon footprint at an amazing rate. So we would like to meet both the goals of public safety and getting as close to zero energy as we can, but we urge you to refer this to the Select Board. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Neal for the Finance Committee.
Yes. Hello? Yep, Tim Neal for the Finance Committee. Our original recommendation was to make no recommendation, and that was made because we just didn't feel there was enough definitive financial information either way to make that determination. We subsequently, once we learned about the possibility of referring to the Select Board, on Monday, last Monday, the 6th of November, we met again, and in this case voted unanimously with one individual absent to recommend that this be referred to the Select Board as proposed.
Thank you. The motion before us is a motion to refer to the Select Board, which requires a majority for passage. If that, I hear a point of order. Wait for the microphone, please, and identify yourself.
Hilda Greenbaum, Precinct 1. Would it be in order to convert this motion for a general bylaw to a resolution, and rather than referral to sort of give the intent that town meeting thinks this is very important? And I think that would carry more weight than a referral. So would that be in order?
No, it would not be in order. Sorry. The warrant specifically is for a bylaw, and you can't make that significant to change on the floor of town meeting. So let me explain the voting process first. So the motion before us is a motion to refer to the Select Board, which requires a majority vote. If, when we come to a vote, that passes, we've disposed of Article 15. If that fails, then the motion before us would be the main motion, which also requires a majority vote. If that passes, it passes. If it fails, it fails. We are now open to general discussion. Yes, second row right there.
Good evening. My name is Lydia Vernon Jones. I'm from Precinct 5, and I am a member of the working group of the Zero Energy for Amherst Public Buildings Bylaw Committee, and I would like to speak initially here for our group. We are delighted that our Select Board wants to work with us on helping Amherst make a dramatic response to climate change and be a responsible participant in the broad movement to reverse climate change. We accept. We look forward to working with them to develop a strategic plan for our town around climate change and exploring many policies and practices that would reduce the carbon footprint of our town, which our sustainability plan has not been updated since 2005. At the same time, having met with them and having discussed this, we see no reason to wait before adopting the Zero Energy for Amherst Public Buildings bylaw. We've consulted with lawyers, we've consulted with town boards, we've been researching this for many months. We need it now. Now is the time to do it. Let's pass this article tonight before any more building plans are made. Let's follow the directive of the U.S. government, the government of Massachusetts, the U.S. Army in making ZE buildings a priority. We look forward to working with the Select Board. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to quickly point out two procedural things. One, Ms. Vernon Jones correctly held up a red card because she was speaking against the motion to refer, so gold star for that. And it also is okay to, when you're speaking, even though the motion on the floor is the one to refer, it's okay to also speak about the article itself. It's too blurry to try and separate those two. Point of order. I hear a point of order.
What would the Jim Oldham, Precinct 5, what would the moderator like those of us who were unable to get cards of many colors to do when the time comes?
Good question, and there's a two-part answer. And the first part is directed to everybody, and if you brought a card home and didn't bring it back, shame on you, and try in the future to always remember, if you bring your cards home, to bring them back. For now, all I can say is borrow a card from a neighbor. And that's really the best we can do. Okay, we are proceeding with the discussion at this point in time. Yeah, I see somebody at the back of the aisle there with a white card.
Lawrence Quigley, Precinct 1.
Wait, I didn't quite hear that. Check your
Lawrence
microphone.
Quigley, Precinct 1. I'm not sure how to refer to the man who has made the motion, but I wonder if he would respond to this. I've heard a reason that there's no reason to do it from that committee. I'm wondering if there's a reason not to refer. If you would address that, please.
Okay. So first, keep in mind that you should address me, and if he wants to raise his hand, he can. You can't request somebody else actually speak. Having said that, Mr. Riddle, would you like to respond to that? Careful.
We several reasons why we are recommending, why we would prefer to pass this article this evening, and then continue to work with the Select Board on implementation or perhaps modification of the article presented to be presented to the spring town meeting. First is that we are anxious that we would not have the option of making assuming what happens in March, if the wrong thing, as far as I'm concerned, happens in March, then there is wording in the Charter Commission article, the Charter Commission charter, that suggests that only minimal changes can be made. That sounded to me like housekeeping changes can be made at the Springtown meeting. So we were scared about that, and we thought it would be a good idea to get this thing on the books, and then continue to work on it with the Select Board. Also, and we think that there is, we have a fear that perhaps what would be produced by the Select Board might be an array of policies in favor of zero energy, subject to, as opposed to a directive, a requirement. And there is something particularly effective about a requirement that we think is an important message to forward to those boards and committees who are working on new buildings that are going to happen sooner rather than later, and where nothing is going to be built soon. There may be selection of the design team that might happen soon. And the selection of the design team is crucial to this. You can't just, for instance, engage the services of somebody who is an expert in public works buildings and not have somebody and not include people who are experts in zero net energy and conservation. So between the anxiety about the Charter Commission wording and the desire to get something on the books now when we can, and when it can influence the behavior of those people, those boards and committees considering new buildings, I think those are the reasons. Maybe others of my committee might want to add to that for why we recommend against the motion to refer.
Thank you. Mr. Steinberg.
information. One is that in order to have a design team, town meeting needs to vote funds to allow for the hiring of a design team. So that isn't going to happen earlier than the next time that there's a town meeting. It depends upon if we're able to get this land problem solved as to whether it would be in April or not. The second is that I made reference to the fact that town council has given an opinion. Basically what it is that the charter says the town meeting will not do anything if the charter passes, will frustrate the purposes of the charter. And the town council's point is a couple. One is that this is not the kind of an action that they would view as frustrating the purpose. But then the second question is, there was an example that was in the charter provision itself. It did create some confusion, said that and basically it is a matter that would have to be determined by the select board. Well, the select board has obviously already thought about this subject very closely in making the motion that we've made tonight. For those reasons, we feel comfortable on both of the points that have been raised.
Thank you. Green card, not three seats in from the aisle there.
Rebecca Demling, Precinct 7. I very much want to support this bylaw, but unfortunately I'm concerned about unknown implications from its implementation. I would very much love to vote on it in April, and I'm hearing that we're able to do that. I want Amherst to be a green community, but I want to do it correctly and not try to fix things after the fact. We have an opportunity to have model legislation for our state, but it should be thoughtful and deliberate, not rushed through because we're afraid of a vote that may or may not pass in March. Thank you.
And all the way in the back row with the green card.
Bob Biaggi, Precinct 2. I was listening to all this, the negatives about compliance, but if you read what's in here for compliance, it says, addition that is not compliant after 12 months shall continue to work towards compliance every year until it is compliant and shall report the results publicly and to the town manager. That doesn't sound like a very difficult thing. I mean, if you can go out and try to do this sort of a thing and it doesn't work, well, this says you just keep trying. You come to the town manager. You just keep trying. And I can't see where all of these negatives come up. Thank you.
Okay, way over there with the red and white card.
Marianne Adams, Precinct 10. I couldn't figure out whether this was a question or an objection to referral. The discussion about referral has been concerned about the fire station and the DPW, but there are many other buildings that are going to be going up in the near future, various multi-use buildings. We don't quite know what's going to be going with the schools. And so I guess I have a question, but also an objection, depending on the answer, whether the select board referral would deal only with the DPW and the fire station, or whether you were going to be coming up with some negotiated policy with the Zero Energy Group that dealt with all the new buildings that will be going up in the foreseeable future.
Mr. Steinberg.
The answer is that the bylaw affects all buildings. The reason that DPW and fire station have been discussed is that because of the timing that we're talking about. Those are the first two that are going to be going. And they also are two of the more unusual buildings. It's much easier to do an office type building. These are unique facilities because equipment goes in and out. Doors are continually being opened and closed, and that makes these very different and unique kinds of facilities.
Thank you. Yeah, the red card, 3 from the back row on the aisle there.
Jacqueline Maidana, Precinct 5. I'm voting against the referral. I was at the select board meeting and I watched it on TV just to make sure that I wasn't wrong. But at no point did any of the select board members say anything positive about this article. So I think referring it back to them, I'm really glad that they're willing to reconsider it. However, I don't think that it's going to be very productive to vote it back to them. I definitely want to vote for this article, not for the...
Thank you. Ms. Kruger, she was first.
Maybe we were at different meetings, but my recollection of our discussion of Article 15 was that we shared the goals of that article, but we had a different idea about the means, and we were very concerned about a bylaw mandating zero net at this point, some because of the technology, some cost, and we didn't feel like we could put the town in that kind of a stricture, but we very much wanted to work on advancing the goals and took that upon ourselves by thinking up referring back to the select board where we would take a lead in making sure that rigorous standards were adopted that would affect all future town buildings. We're not exactly sure the shape and we wouldn't do it alone, but we were positive about sharing the goals of the zero net energy bylaw, and to that end, we would ask you to please refer it back. We're very serious about this.
Green card way over against the aisle there.
It's Catherine Oppie, Precinct 9. So I want to support something that a previous speaker said, which a couple things actually, that this is clearly a goal that everybody, or certainly everybody who's spoken tonight on this article supports. We all support the idea of zero energy buildings. What I hear the select board asking for, however, is for us to also consider and work together to make sure that this goal doesn't result in potential negative consequences to the town, to the larger town. And they named several consequences that could possibly be a result of something becoming a bylaw before we've had a chance for these groups to really sit down, work together, the fire building and DPW advisory committee, the select board, the net zero advisory committee, and I don't really see what the risk is by allowing these groups, these bodies to work together to come up with something that we can all support. There have been so many articles that have come before this body that have been divisive and difficult. And here is something where we really all share the same goal, and the select board is simply asking that we refer back so that we can make it something that everyone can support wholeheartedly, as we did in the last article. And through their deliberations, they've considered some things that passing it tonight as a bylaw could result in negative consequences. So I'm not sure. And it's clear now that we can vote on this in April. It will come back to town meeting. So I'm just not sure what the risk is to refer it back. So I'm going to support referring it back to the select board.
Thank you. Yes, third row from the end with the red card. Yes.
Jerry Weiss, Precinct 8. I am not going to support referral. I think it's a dangerous referral. I heard that from the select board that there were serious consequences that could arise from this, but I only heard one mentioned, which was that building sites might be difficult to find, might be more difficult to find. And I want to remind people that the article allows for off-site energy production, so that for that very reason. I didn't hear any other serious consequences for passing this. I do have a serious consequence for not passing it. Our earth is burning up. And we can keep kicking this can down the road and hope that we're going to come up with better ideas down the road. But while we're waiting down the road, the glaciers are melting, the icebergs are breaking off, the climate's heating up, we're seeing catastrophes multiply every year. If not now, when? And I'm not confident this will come back in the spring. It might. I think we got to do it and stop waiting.
Mr. Slaughter.
What does that word say?
So,
Oh, no.
good evening. So I'll provide another example of where I struggle with this bylaw as it currently is at this point is in front of us, and that is there are some mechanical issues with the structure of that, and a perfect example of one is one that was mentioned earlier with regard to if it doesn't meet net zero, you just keep trying. So monitoring whether you're meeting net zero or not is not that difficult. It is part of the process when you go to build this type of a building. The difficulty is that you are then compelled to make it net zero, which means potentially if the building is incapable of it, then you have to invest additionally in its capital to make it net zero. So if you are in a circumstance where you invest additionally to create additional capital in the building to try to achieve net zero, and you again still don't make net zero, then you're going to continue to invest capital money into that. And so at some point, that starts to get more expensive than is potentially comfortable for everyone, and so, or capable by the community for that. So I see that as a difficulty in the current structure of the bylaw as it is written now, that you could get into a circumstance, because we don't all have there's not enough knowledge of the technology that's necessary for whatever building that might come before us to know that there will be a technological solution. And so because we're in and required by a bylaw to then continue to pursue that, we would have to then to continue to invest capital monies in trying to achieve that. And we could get to a place where that cost is way too burdensome to the community. And so that's a concern I have. Is there a place for understanding that mechanical piece of the bylaw better and to a place where it is functional for the community as a whole?
Yes, third row back with the red card there.
John Michaels, Precinct 10. I call the question.
I'm sorry, I'm not going to accept that motion. If you want to, no. This happened on Monday, and I spoke to the meeting about it. And if you want to make a motion, you need to use a white card. I'm trying to be fair and call on red cards and green cards and white cards. But if somebody uses a red card and then is speaking in favor of something, I'm going to stop you, and vice versa. And I'm not going to accept a motion if you hold either a red or a green card. So you can try again with a white card, or somebody else can, but I'm not going to accept that motion. And we all should consider, is it time to come to a vote sometime soon? Okay. Right here with the red card.
Nothing, Shevin, Precinct 7. No bylaw that we've developed, and I've been in town meeting a little more than 30 years, has always been perfect. Planning board has come back with this amendment or that amendment. We have to start this act now. The time is running out for our children, our great-grandchildren, whatever. I heard, earlier this evening, I heard the select board say they were too busy to meet again with the town meeting committee that wanted the town meeting advisory committee because they had so much to do. Well, if the select board has so much to do, how much time are they going to have to devote to this? I know that some of the finest minds in this community have been working on this bylaw, and I think we have to pass it tonight.
Right there, 4 rows from the back with the white card.
Amanda Robertson, Precinct 5. Call the question. Thank you.
Motion for the previous question has been made and seconded. If 2/3 of you vote in favor, we will come to an immediate vote on the motion to refer the article to the select board. All those in favor of the motion for the previous question, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. No. Moderator hears 2/3. We need an electronic vote. Motion for the previous question. We'll be ready in about 10 seconds. Hang in there. Pressure's on.
What I think it's going to do, I think what's going to happen is the motion to refer is not going to pass. And then the question will be open again. And I think then the article will be approved. Yes. But I think the motion to refer is not going to occur. And I'm voting not to refer.
Voting window is open. If you don't see your vote, just press the button again.
People are confused what they're voting on.
Well, we'll discuss it at the end, but they really shouldn't be. Motion for the previous question has passed. 116 yes, 22 no, 6 abstentions. There was a point of order that people were confused. I feel that I declared the vote clearly, and on the screen it says Article 15, previous question. So if you're really confused about what we're voting on, you have to make a point of order before the voting window starts. But you should have, and I don't think you were confused, were you? So yeah, just make a point of order if you're confused. At any rate, the motion of the previous question passed. What's now before us is the motion to refer Article 15 to the Select Board, which requires a majority vote. And all those in favor of the motion to refer Article 15 to the Select Board, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. No. The noes have it. We want an electronic vote on that too. And the window is open. The vote is yes 73, no 112. The motion to refer to the Select Board has failed. The main motion is back before us. It is open to discussion, but I'm also hoping, unless you have something brand new to say that no one's heard before, I'd really ask people to come to a vote fairly soon. Yeah, I see a white card right at the end of that row there.
Maria Kapicki, Precinct 8. I call the question.
Motion for the previous question has been made and seconded. I'm accepting that. If it had been at the beginning of the entire debate, I wouldn't have accepted it, but I think it's perfectly appropriate for town meeting to decide now if they're done with the debate or not. So we are now going to have a vote on the motion for the previous question. If 2/3 of you vote yes, we will then immediately come to a vote on the main motion under Article 15. If 2/3 of you do not vote yes, then we will continue discussion. Everybody clear on what we're voting on? All those in favor of the motion for the previous question, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. No. Moderator, here's 2/3. We now come to a vote on the main motion under Article 15. Majority vote is required. Motion is in your motion sheet. All those in favor of the motion under Article 15, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. No. Moderator, here's a majority, but we'll have an electronic vote. We have yes 123, no 54. Article 15 has passed. We now are moving on to Article 10. And I call on somebody, Ms. Hazard, to make a motion. I'm hoping Ms. Hazard is here. There you are. Since you're speaking to this, why don't you come forward? What was that?
I thought with the school committee members were
No, we weren't going to bother. No. Ms. Hazard just asked if I wanted the school committee members to come forward and sit at the table, and I said we don't need to do that. They can speak from their seats if they want to, but people should settle down, and Ms. Hazard, you may make your motion.
Okay. I move in terms of the article with the addition of the prefix pre before kindergarten in the last sentence so that the end of the sentence reads, a regional school district for students in grades pre-kindergarten through 6.
Motion's been made and seconded. You may speak to your motion.
In the town meeting packet, you'll find a printout of a presentation entitled Amherst Pelham Regionalization Study. Looks like this. Provides information, provides background and information about this article. Article 10, Regional School District Planning Committee, asks Amherst Town Meeting to vote to form a study group to examine the implications of forming a pre-kindergarten through 6th grade region with another town. Pelham Town Meeting has recently voted overwhelmingly to form a Regional School District Planning Committee, an RSDPC. And should this article pass Amherst Town Meeting, the two planning committees from Amherst and Pelham can vote to join together to form a planning board. This board would then study regionalization between Amherst and Pelham elementary schools, focusing on issues such as finances, governance, and educational implications. I want to stress that a vote for this article is not a vote for regionalization. It is a vote to study it in more depth. A decision to regionalize requires a significant process, culminating with another vote by both town meetings. So why go forward with this study? Pelham and Amherst are both facing upcoming financial challenges and are looking for new external revenue streams to maintain essential educational programming. The potential financial impact of regionalization with Pelham would be an anticipated $240,000 annually in transportation reimbursement to be shared between the towns. This is money that the state gives to towns to ease transportation costs and to incentivize regionalization. This is a conservative estimate based on the state's underfunding of transportation reimbursement in recent years. Furthermore, State Auditor Suzanne Bump just released a study calling for modernizing the funding structure for regional schools. Recommendations to the Commonwealth include developing deeper incentives to encourage communities to regionalize and fully funding its commitment to reimburse 100% of regional transportation expenses. So if these recommendations were followed, it would mean increased external revenue from regionalization. There is also a potential one-time bonus aid package of $63,650 it's an incentive that covers transition costs. The Amherst School Committee discussed this article and unanimously voted to endorse it. The general sense of the committee was that along with finances, given the current challenges around infrastructure and enrollment in our town, there are enough potential educational benefits from regionalization with Pelham to warrant further study. It is important to note that this study is significantly less complex than the most recent exploration of K-12 regionalization, which involved 4 towns and would have required opening and changing an existing agreement. This study involves 2 towns, and there is no existing regional agreement between them. Furthermore, our 2 districts already share curriculum and a central office, making the process much more straightforward. Should this pass, the superintendent is hopeful that we can apply for and receive a grant entitled the Efficiency and Regionalization Competitive Grant Program that will fund necessary outside resources and expertise. In the event that this money does not come through, consultation and resources will be covered internally without further cost to the town. This is a multi-year process. Should regionalization articles come back to the 2 town meetings for approval, and should both pass, the soonest we would anticipate changes would not be until the fall of 2020. Thank you for considering this article.
Thank you. Mr. Steinberg for the Select Board.
Yes. Select Board voted unanimously to support Article 10. Many of the reasons that we have are similar to what Ms. Hazard has already presented to you. So I don't want to go through the entire statement that I prepared and repeat everything that she said. I was the chair of the Regional School District Planning board that was the 4-town board that Ms. Hazard referred to, and Ms. Brewer was also a member of that particular board. It was a complex process. There was a lot of issues having to do with governance. There were issues having to do with funding, the regional assessment, regional assessment formula, and the educational benefits. We worked through those. We learned a lot. I think that what we learned in that process is going to make the next process much simpler to pursue. We think that it makes sense to explore it. We're not binding either community to accepting the results of that exploration, but we think that it is worthwhile for the potential benefit for both communities, and particularly for Amherst, who we represent, to go forward and to create this process and let it go forward so that we have something to consider. Thank you.
And Ms. Tyler? Yeah, I hear a point of order.
Jim Oldham, Precinct 5. Sorry, Mr. Moderator, I didn't want to interrupt the speaker, but I noted the clock wasn't operating at that time, so I want to make sure we don't, that continues in the
I do
future.
too, yes. Unfortunately, the overhead is strategically placed, so I can't see the light on the clock there. But I'd noticed that too, but he finished. But thank you. And Ms. Tileman for the Finance Committee.
On October 12th, the Finance Committee unanimously voted to support this article. Our explanation is in your town meeting report.
Thank you. This requires a majority vote for passage, and we are open to discussion. Yes, right there in the third row.
Diana Stein, Precinct 9. I am wondering where it talks about being able to save possibly $240,000 in transportation costs, if that would be shared equally or if that is something that would be part of the study committee's charge.
Yes, in the back row there. Why don't you step forward and identify yourself?
Michael Morris, Superintendent, and that would be one of the items that if the regional committees wanted to go forward, that they would actively study. There's no set formula that is prearranged or pre-agreed to. That's one of the things that would have to be discussed and agreed upon if that was to move forward.
Thank you. You can stay forward also in case there are more questions. Yes, I see a white card there right in the middle.
Jim Oldham, Precinct 5. Just a question. The presentation was very clear. This is focused on two towns, Amherst and Pelham. The two committees have voted. The Pelham town meeting has voted. So why does the motion or why does the article just refer to another town? Why aren't we being explicit in our vote, since it clearly is directed at Amherst and Pelham?
Mr. Morris.
And so prior legal counsel had advised that according to MGL, it's actually the committee that gets formed as part of this article that gets to make that decision. I would say that there's been no discussion with any other towns. I don't want to speak for the school committee, but there's been no intent beyond Amherst and Pelham, but it's really about the MGL aspect of it, not about intent.
Further discussion? Yes, in the back there.
Ellenberg, Precinct 1. I wonder whether this is also aimed at this mega school idea. And I'm a person that went through the public schools. I'm a person that's taught in the public schools. And we're talking about preschool. Let's let kids be kids for a while. A lot of us don't want this mega school complex going up. And let's allow our children, those of us who have children, to be children a little longer.
Is there further discussion before we come to a vote? I see no hands. Let's vote. Again, this requires a majority. All those in favor of the motion under Article 10, as it appears on the screen, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. No. The ayes have it. We will have an electronic vote. The results are 137 yes, 12 no. Article 10 has passed. I now call on Ms. Hazard to make a motion under Article 11.
Thank you. Okay. I move in terms of the article with the addition of the phrase, "and our elected Governor Charlie Baker," at the end of the final paragraph.
Motion's been made and seconded. You may speak to your motion.
The Amherst School Committee voted unanimously on September 25th to put Article 11, Resolution regarding charter school funding and expansion, on the fall town warrant. This article arose from ongoing concerns about the funding formula for charter schools, which we believe is fundamentally flawed as it is based on the spending level of the district, is taken directly from the sending district's funding, and does so without consideration for the need level of the students sent. The budget impact is further escalated for districts such as Amherst and Amherst Pelham Regional that choose to substantially invest in strong programs and resources for students with disabilities, English language learners, and economically disadvantaged students. This formula actually creates a disincentive for districts to service special needs students with their peers within district programming. Furthermore, the state's charter school reimbursement program has not been fully funded since 2012. While compared to surrounding towns, our districts are sending a relatively low number of students to charter schools. Still, 30% of the increase in Amherst elementary and regional expenses over the last 10 years can be attributed to charter tuition. The average cost per charter student to the Amherst elementary schools is $18,881, and at the regional level is $17,495, with the total projected cost of charter school tuition to Amherst and the region in FY18 at $3.6 million. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education caps charter costs for districts at 9% of their budget. If our districts were to reach this 9% cap, it would mean sending approximately $1.3 million more to charter schools, which could be equated to about 21 teachers' salaries. Given that administrative costs have already been cut 17% in the past 2 years, there is little more that can be cut away from our classrooms. Given that the elementary school and regional budgets combined make up approximately 42% of Amherst's budget, the Amherst School Committee feels that an issue of such financial impact on the schools is appropriate to bring before town meeting, the body charged with overseeing the town's budget. This resolution asks that the legislature develop a funding formula for district public schools and charter schools that adequately funds their respective missions, and that the state not approve any charter school expansion requests until this formula has been corrected. Notably, in recent news, the NAACP has called for a moratorium on new and the expansion of charter schools, reaffirmed in the past weeks due to equity and funding concerns. Their recommendations, drawn from the work of a 12-member task force over the past year, include that the moratorium not be lifted at least until various stipulations are met, including that public funds not be diverted to charter schools at the expense of the public school system. As a further note, legislative bodies in surrounding towns are considering and passing resolutions that express similar concerns around charter school funding and expansions. Thank you.
Thank you. I now call on Mr. Steinberg for the Select Board.
Thank you. I'll try and bear the time in mind. I can't see a clock, however, from here. The Select Board voted unanimously to support Article 11. The resolution will strongly convey to the Commissioner of Elementary and Secondary Education, the Board of Education, Elementary and Secondary Education, the Legislature, and the Governor that the children of Amherst are adversely affected by charter schools as they currently financed, and that their education will be further undermined if there's charter school enrollment increase before this is addressed. The reasons set forth in the proposed resolution explained by the school committee, the present funding formula for charter schools is an expense to our Amherst elementary and regional middle and high schools. It is undermining the education of students in those schools. The formulas that determines the amount paid for charter schools is unreasonable. It does not reflect the cost to educate the children at the charter schools, and it does not consider the effect on our ability to educate the children in our public schools. Charter schools do not draw students that reflect the range of students in our community. Students who require special programs and attention are disproportionately left within our public schools. We recommend that you pass this resolution that Amherst strongly state our concerns about how charter schools are funded and how they affect our public schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Pavanelli from the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Finance Committee.
Microphone over there.
I'm on a microphone.
There we go.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Finance Committee's vote on this article is not a vote for or against charter schools. Article 11 calls on the state to address funding for charter school reimbursement before expansion. The lack of full reimbursement for charter school students has had a negative effect on our school budgets. For this reason, the Finance Committee voted 7-0 to recommend this article.
Thank you. The requirement for passage is a majority. This is a resolution. It is a non-binding resolution, and we are now open to discussion from the floor. Yes, in the back corner there.
Vince O'Connor, Precinct 1. I voted against charter school expansion in last November. And I even can add a horror story to the just what is in the resolution and what was presented by the presenter for the school committee. It may even be worse than you think it is, because our charter school costs and the charter school costs of surrounding districts, including Pelham, which has 40% of its students school choice from out of district, those costs are achieved. The per pupil costs that we have to reimburse charter schools are calculated by taking the total expenditures of the school district for that particular type of school, elementary or regional, and dividing them by the number of students from that district or town or municipality which attend that school. So actually, our charter school costs are excessive because we do have school choice students in both the elementary and regional schools, and the Pelham schools school choice charter school costs are unbelievably excessive, over $20,000 a year, which is certainly not what they spend per capita, because in order to determine what Pelham should pay for its charter school students, they remove 40% of the students and then divide the remainder of the students into the total cost of the district. So that will add to the horror story. The reason I am going to abstain from this, and I absolutely do not disagree with the school committee's efforts on this regard, but I cannot vote for this article because I watched the Amherst School Committee have 4 times. I watched them when the advocates for a Chinese immersion program came to the school committee and asked that they institute a program at Wildwood School, and the school committee made it clear that this kind of outside proposal was not going to be taken seriously.
You're getting into, Mr. O'Connor, you're getting into motives here a little bit. I don't appreciate that.
I don't think it's motives.
Well,
I mean, I was there at the meeting, and I heard what the folks who subsequently started the charter school heard. So, and I've also been witness to the 3 attempts, 2 by staff reports and 1 by a community group, to institute a Spanish immersion program at Crocker Farm. Until the school committee acknowledges its part in the departure of so many students from this district into charter schools, I just can't vote for this article. And I just, as bad as the funding process is, again, I don't disagree with the school committee pursuing this, but I can't vote for the article.
Okay. I hear a point of order.
I'm sorry, but I do feel this is very much into motives, and I just don't think that's appropriate. He's not speaking to the article.
Okay, he's done speaking now, and we're going to move on. Ms. Hazard.
I just wanted to note, if people may not know this, that the district recently did a choice charter and private school survey that looks at, it surveyed families whose children are not currently, who live in here in Amherst but are not currently in our district schools. That provided a lot of information that's being analyzed, and there is currently an enrollment working group subcommittee that is looking at the possibility of a Spanish immersion program being instituted in our schools and what the implications of that might be. So I just wanted to give people an update that that is currently underway.
Thank you. Is there further discussion before we come to a vote? Yes, I see a white card there.
Thank you. Janet McGowan, Precinct 8. I have a question for school committee people, or the. My family has sort of bounced back between private school and public school, and when we've had problems in our public school, we could either move or put our kids in private school, and we've done that. And I wouldn't recommend this path, but that's the path we took. When the referendum came on charter commissions, I voted to. I can't remember which way, but I basically voted charter schools. I basically voted as if I was a parent in Boston who had a kid in a public school that was not good, and to give them the chance. And so I wonder if the school committee has thought about this resolution and the effect on families and kids in school districts that are really struggling, that are like Hollyoaks in state receivership. And the option to go to the Chinese charter school would be an option to go to one of the top performing schools in the state, and kind of shutting the door to that. And, in Amherst, we're sort of luckier because we have, a pretty strong district in many respects, a very strong district. But for other people in other towns, they don't have that choice. And people can't afford to move, can't afford to put their kids in private school. And I try to put myself in those shoes because I know what it's like when you're sitting there with your kid in a school that you feel like is not working at all. And I know I had options. So I wonder if you could address the issue about the impact of this on other kids, in other schools that don't work.
Ms. Hazard.
So this resolution is not a reflection of the Amherst School Committee's opinion about the merits of charter schools in their curriculum or what they're offering to schools. It's a reflection of the impact, the financial impact of charter schools and expansions on the budget of our schools in this district. So that's as much as I'm going to comment, because that's not the area that this is covering. Thank you.
Further discussion? I see a hand back there.
Hellenberg, Precinct 1. I'm going to vote against this, and I'll tell you, I'm very ambivalent because aside from electricians, probably the teachers' union is the only labor movement in this country, and that's very unfortunate. However, having taught in the schools, having witnessed how regimented they are, and how they just kill the creativity in children, I have always been against charter schools, but I'm changing my mind. I want to see kids have a chance.
Are we ready to come to a vote? I see no hands, so we can come to a vote. The motion is before you on the screen. This requires a majority, and it is a resolution. All those in favor of the motion under Article 11, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. No. The ayes have it. We now still have time left in the evening, which is very exciting. Do we have a planning board lurking out there? Yes, so if the planning board could come up to the front table. We are now moving all the way back to Article 7. Please don't leave the room, folks. The planning board's moving quickly, and we want to keep moving on this. We owe the next article as much attention as all the ones that came before it. And folks, as soon as you're ready, Mr. Birdwhistle can make the motion. Calling on Mr. Birdwhistle to make a motion for Article 7.
Move in terms of the article.
Motion's been made and seconded. You may speak to your motion. I hear point of order.
Mr. Moderator, are we going back to the having disposed of all the articles that we asked to be put in place ahead of the usual order? Are we going back to the usual order?
We've disposed of all the articles that had changed their order, so now we're going to the next in line that we haven't done yet, which is 7.
Okay.
That make sense?
Okay.
Because we did 1 through 6, and we just did 13, 12, 16, 15, 10, and 11.
Thank you.
So Mr. Birdwhistle, do you have a point of order? Okay, then wait for the microphone, please.
Helen Berg, Precinct 1. I think we voted in 2014 to make recreation.
I'm sorry. Would you please talk to the moderator and tell me what your point of order is?
I think we've had a moratorium for years. We were told December 15th marijuana would be legalized.
Okay. I'm sorry.
2014.
Excuse me. You need to stop speaking now. That is not a point of order. It's open for discussion, and you need to give the microphone back, and Mr. Birdwhistle can speak to his motion.
Ms. Chow is going to speak for the
I'm
board.
sorry. So, Ms. Chow, you're speaking to it.
Maria Chow, Planning Board. This is Article 7, the zoning bylaw article about the temporary moratorium on recreational marijuana establishments. So this is the last of the 5 warrant articles that we're working together to address this newly legal industry of recreational marijuana. Concurrent with drafting the zoning Article 6, which were the regulations for recreational marijuana retailers, this article for a temporary moratorium on recreational marijuana establishments was also created as mainly as a backup measure in case Article 6 did not pass, as well as just to bring it as an option for town meeting for discussion and to potentially enact a temporary moratorium. So as you all know, zoning bylaw 6 did indeed pass, but if this article passes, it would take precedent over Article 6. The The purpose of this article is to adopt a temporary moratorium on the use of land or structures for a recreational marijuana establishment to be in effect through December 31st, 2018. The article defines a recreational marijuana establishment as a marijuana cultivator, independent testing laboratory, marijuana product manufacturer, marijuana retailer, or any other type of licensed marijuana-related business for non-medical purposes. The mechanics, basically the article would amend the zoning bylaw section 3.0 prohibited uses by adding a new section, section 3.03, temporary moratorium on recreational marijuana. And within that section, it lists the purpose of the moratorium. It contains a definition of recreational marijuana establishment. And it states that the moratorium would be in effect through December 31st, 2018. So the benefits, are basically it would provide additional time to adopt zoning that reflects the Cannabis Control Commission's regulations, which should be due or issued by March 15th of 2018. And the risks, the article would prevent any new recreational marijuana establishments from opening in Amherst until the moratorium ends, thereby putting the town at an economic disadvantage of losing potential investors to seek locations in neighboring areas. Amherst may experience greater than usual impacts of the consumption of marijuana, whether or not there are retailers located in town. But by allowing retailers to locate in Amherst, the town can benefit from the additional tax revenue, which would help offset the expenses associated with those impacts. So the process, basically town council, KP Law, had drafted a model zoning temporary moratorium article on which this Article 7 is based. The article has been reviewed by various town staff members, including Planning Department, Inspection Services, Health Department, and Economic Development. The zoning subcommittee reviewed the temporary moratorium this past summer, and it was decided to bring this article to the fall town meeting. A planning board public hearing on this article was held September 19th, and we voted 7-0-0 with 2 members absent to bring it to town meeting with no recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kruger for the Select Board.
Okay, the Select Board voted 5-0 to not recommend Article 7 if Article 6 passed. That was the zoning bylaw we did on Monday night. So I'm going to be really short, but I want to tell you that, as Ms. Chow said, this article was placed on the warrant as a safety net in case our zoning bylaw regulating retail establishments was not completed in time or ran into some snags that would have allowed us to revert to the moratorium. So over 80 communities in the Commonwealth chose to go the moratorium route. We chose to go the zoning bylaw route, even though there's many known unknowns about this. So the Select Board had voted if 6 passed, we would then recommend that you not adopt Article 7. If the zoning bylaw had failed, then this would be our backup position. We would have recommended it. So that's our position. So it's a little confusing. We had 5 articles, and given that the 4th one of those did pass on Monday night, we would recommend that you not approve the moratorium.
Thank you. This will require a 2/3, oh, I'm sorry, the Finance Committee has no position. Correct me if I'm wrong. No one's correcting me, so we're good. And this is a zoning bylaw, so it will require a 2/3 vote for passage. Is there discussion before we come to a vote? Yeah, right in the front row there.
Rob Kussner, Precinct 3. A question, perhaps. Sorry. I'm supposed to address the moderator. A question for whoever can answer this. We do have several surrounding communities. Which of them have approved this moratorium? One of the Select Board members indicated that many communities had. Have any of our surrounding communities already approved this moratorium? Something analogous to this?
Mr. Kravitz, do you have that information? Maybe?
I'm not aware of any of the immediately surrounding communities that have.
Thank you. Further discussion before a vote? Yeah, the white card right next to the aisle there.
I'm tempted to call the question, but I've never done. I don't understand why we're not dismissing
Identify
this.
yourself, please.
Meg Gage, Precinct 1. Why are we not just dismissing this? Seems like that would be quicker. If this was in place in case something else didn't pass that did pass.
Yes, Ms. Brestrup.
Planning board didn't have an opportunity.
Wait for that microphone to get turned on. It's not you, it's the soundboard.
Excuse me, the planning board, Chris Brestrup, planning director, the planning board didn't have an opportunity to meet between Wednesday's vote and tonight's vote, so they might have made a recommendation to make a motion to dismiss, and anyone in the town meeting may make that motion.
Yes, in the back corner there.
Vince O'Connor, Precinct 1. Just to reassure people who think there might be something that requires this, first, the regulations are going to come out on March 15th from the State Cannabis Control Commission. The town meeting, the warrant for the spring town meeting, the annual town meeting next year won't be signed until after the town election, early April. That's the usual custom. So we would have plenty of time to put something on. If there was something in the Control Commission's regulations that we just found very difficult, we could do that. But the practical matter also is that the regulations are due out on the 15th. They may not come out till April, but they're due out on March 15th. Licenses, the permits to use the license that an entity gets from the state has to come from the town. And so the licenses from the state will not be issued until, which is required for everyone who has retail services for this product, will not, or have to be, or supposed to be out by June, but they are not likely to be out until July. After that, the entity that gets the license will then have to come to the town for a permit. Once the permit process is over and they may or may not get a license, then they have to either create or renovate a facility to engage in the activities that have been permitted by either the planning board or the zoning board of appeals. Folks, this was never going to be a problem because the practical realities of the situation will be that probably no retail establishment other than the ones that have already been licensed and permitted for medical marijuana will have been in place by the time this moratorium is due to take effect. So it really wasn't necessary at a practical level in any event, and I think we can dispose of this easily by a no vote without having to have other motions, because it will not practically affect the town in any way.
Okay. Sure. Right over there with the white card. Do I hear a second? Motion of the previous question has been made and seconded. If 2/3 of you vote yes, we will come to an immediate vote on Article 7, which in turn also requires 2/3 for passage. First vote is for the previous question to end debate. All those in favor of the motion for the previous question, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion of the previous question has passed. We now come to an immediate vote on Article 7. The motion is, in terms of the article before you, this requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor of the motion for Article 7, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. No. Article 7 has failed. And I now call on, hang on, I'm going to take a deep breath for 8 seconds. 2, 1. I now call on the select board to make a motion. Ms. Brewer.
Good evening.
Folks, don't go away yet. We're not done. Is somebody in the select board prepared to make a motion? Mr. Slaughter.
Yes. I'm waiting for the mic. There we go. I move to adjourn to 7 p.m. Thursday, November 9th.
Motion made and seconded. This is not debatable. The motion is to adjourn to tomorrow night. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. No. Motion has failed. Mr. Slaughter.
Oh, I know.
I move to adjourn to 7 p.m. Monday, November 13th.
Motion is made and seconded, not debatable. All those in favor of adjourning to next Monday, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. Motion has passed. We are adjourned until Monday, November 13th.